Deep in the Pleistocene epoch, over 100,000 years ago, the region known as ancient Sunderland was covered in primeval mangrove jungles. Modern human civilization did not exist here. This was the domain of the Guangdong tiger, scientifically known as Panthera tigris siloensis, and it represents the absolute baseline of feline evolution. This scale comparison shows the sheer physical scale of this extinct predator. Weighing in at an estimated 400 kilograms, the Guangdong tiger dwarfs the largest modern Bengal tigers, rendering it among the largest felids known to have ever lived on Earth. For millennia, these harsh, extreme geographic environments fueled dominant adaptations. Cut off from outside competition, these cats evolved to act as the untouchable rulers of their ecosystems. In the year 1900, the global footprint of the species looked like this. An estimated 100,000 tigers roamed a contiguous, sprawling territory, stretching from eastern Turkey, across the Siberian snowscapes, and all the way down into the islands of Indonesia. But that vast biological network rapidly fractured as it collided with human industrialization. As railways and expanding cities punctured the wild, the tiger's territory was cut into isolated pockets. The upcoming century would trigger a relentless wave of localized extinctions, specifically targeting the most uniquely adapted branches of the tiger family tree. The 1900s represented a rapid chronological erasure of millions of years of specialized biological history. Moving the timeline to the 1930s, on the Indonesian island of Bali, we find a feline population that had evolved into a highly distinct island dwarf. This historical document highlights the extinct Bali tiger. Notice the specific biological markers. It possessed a distinctly small stature and unusually dark fur. To the locals, this animal was deeply revered. The Balinese integrated the tiger into folkloric magic and carved its likeness into traditional, protective barong macan masks. When Dutch colonizers secured control over Bali, they brought high-powered rifles and a competitive sport hunting mentality. European sportsmen laid large, heavy steel foot traps, hidden under animal bait, to capture them. Simultaneously, the island's rich volcanic slopes were rapidly slashed and converted into commercial palm plantations and irrigated rice fields. Geographic isolation created the Bali tiger, but it ultimately doomed it. When industrial agriculture consumed the limited landscape, the tigers had nowhere left to retreat. In the 1950s, the timeline shifts to the freezing riverine corridors and sparse forests of Central Asia and the Middle East. Here lived the Caspian tiger, a massive steppe giant that rivaled the Siberian tiger in size. It carried the thickest fur of any tiger, glowing with bright cinnamon shades to blend into the dry river reeds. This giant predator collided directly with the Russian colonization of Turkestan. The government deployed the regular military to systematically clear predators from the forests. They needed the landscape emptied so the river basins could be drained and replaced with highly lucrative state-sponsored cotton crops. A secondary fatal blow hit the ecosystem simultaneously. The tiger's primary prey base, the wild boar, was decimated by severe human overhunting and massive die-offs from agricultural swine fever. Depleted of food and actively hunted by the military, the population collapsed. The Caspian tiger proves that even the most massive predators are erased when their underlying food web and habitat are simultaneously dismantled by the state. By the 1970s, the erasure moved to the island of Java. The fragile landscape was buckling under the pressure of an exploding human population, which had reached 85 million. The Javan tiger was uniquely built for this environment. Though relatively small, it possessed immense physical power, famously noted for having the strength to break a water buffalo's leg with its paws. Look at this photograph of a managed forest in Java. The island's natural, complex forests were methodically slashed and replaced by these uniform commercial plantations of rubber, coffee, and teak, environments entirely unsuitable for wild game. The government issued official bounties for hunting tigers. Civil unrest pushed armed groups to hide inside nature reserves, shooting the wildlife. Finally, disease wiped out the Javan rusa deer, eliminating the tiger's last reliable food source. Late-stage efforts to save them in Meru Batiri National Park failed. After years of setting up camera traps that only photographed poachers, The Javan tiger was assessed as completely extinct in 2008. Last-minute conservation efforts cannot reverse the momentum of decades of systemic ecological fragmentation. We are now left with a stark, sterile aftermath. Looking at this photograph of tagged skulls inside a museum archive, we see millions of years of distinct biological evolution reduced to catalogued bone fragments. In 2017, scientists ran mitochondrial DNA tests on these scattered museum specimens. The analysis mapped out a 12,000-year genetic heritage, confirming that these distinct populations colonized the islands during the last ice age. These preserved pelts and isolated skulls are the only physical evidence left of the biological majesty that once ruled the continent. There is one rare anomaly in this timeline. In the 1940s, the Amur, or Siberian tiger, was hunted down to just 40 individuals in the wild. Yet, it survived. It survived largely due to the geopolitics of the Cold War. Heightened border security and military tension caused Russia to completely lock down its eastern forests, inadvertently creating an impenetrable shield against human settlement. The timeline shows us that no unique biological adaptation, whether a 400-kilogram giant or a highly specialized island dwarf, can outpace human habitat destruction. Today, our geopolitical and economic choices are the only thing standing between the remaining tigers and the fossil record.